That totally ends like funeral music. What is up, everybody? Welcome into the Malcolm Smith episode 56 of the Bark and Brown Show. I'm your host, Jacob at Roachism13 on the Twitters. I have a nice shiny new camera so you can see all of this in high def. Sorry, folks. Joined as always by my wonderful co-hosts, Mr. Nick Carnes at Carnesies817 on Twitter and Mr. Ed in Columbus. Gentlemen, how are we tonight?
Feeling great. We've got a packed show full of guests. We've got different perspectives to hear and all kinds of fun prep for the actual season now. So I'm really glad we've transitioned from draft prep prospect talk to actual, okay, so how are these matchups going to be? I love that.
I am so looking forward to talking to both of our guests tonight, but especially our first guest, because I really enjoy getting to talk to some other draft talk about other drafts than the Browns, because a lot of times you get these guys that we studied and wanted for so long end up on other teams, and usually they end up in Baltimore if I covet them. And so you're welcome, Baltimore's, because that's just what happens every freaking year. But Baltimore is what they are. Okay, but so I'm really looking forward to that. Ed, I heard you had a great weekend.
I did have a great weekend because I went home like LeBron, and unfortunately, like LeBron, I had to leave. He chose to leave. But yes, I spent Saturday at the Top Dog Tailgate to benefit Cleveland City Dogs. And I was joined by co-host Nick Carnes was there. And we had a fun time. Dog Chug was there as well with Ross and Andy and Roger. And it was a great time. It was great. Anytime I can get back home, it's always fun. Beautiful weather, great food, fun, and great time. And I felt energized. And now you know what? And one thing great about what we're doing now is we're transitioning and talking about who we got to beat. We got to beat Baltimore, we got to beat Pittsburgh, but we got to beat that team in the same state as us. And for tax purposes, Cincinnati is in the state of Ohio, so that's always a good thing. So yes, we'll be talking Bengals tonight, and I'm all excited about that.
I'm very, very excited. We are presented by the Faithful Dog Network, so we are happy to be on this Twitch channel. Thank you for all the likes, comments, subscribes, all the follows, everybody that watched me do the one chip challenge here on this network on Saturday. That was the worst night of my life, and I'm still recovering.
Just bring the whole carton.
Listen, man, just bring me the cart. I should have I said I was going to bring the whole carton of milk to begin with. She said, nah, you ain't going to need all that milk. I needed all that milk, so I don't.
You needed a cow. You should have just got a cow.
That's what everybody told me. They're like, you can buy a cow for the next one. I said, I guess.
There you go. Perfect.
But guys, let's just go right into it. And we're going to join by our first guest. He's a writer at Cincy Juggle for SB Nation, has a podcast where he goes Browns Bengals, which I like, Battle of Ohio. We're going to bring in Mr. Drew Garrison. Drew, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How you fellas doing tonight?
I'm rocked up and ready to go.
I'm
excited. You know what? Because there's been all kinds of banter and shit talk back and forth between Bengals and Browns Twitter. So it's kind of cool to start actually talking about next year and playing football rather than draft prep.
Yeah. The May dead period, it's always a little weird, but OTAs kind of come around. We've had everybody back in town except for Jesse Bates. I think you said we might touch on that. And so, yeah, man, it's fun to actually see some guys back on the field, catching passes, throwing balls, all that good stuff, and not having to, dissect every picture to see if Joe Burrow's knee looks like it's about to fall off or not.
That had to be rough. I remember that. Wow, that was
last offseason was terrible, man. That was hard. I mean, we were literally zooming in on his knee. It was a tough time.
It was Joe Burrow.
I remember especially it was the uniform reveal where he's sitting on he's sitting on the throne and everybody zoomed in on the giant scar. Like I just remember that.
And
just came back.
There's
Joe Burrow. That picture came out, and Burrow just came with the hardest Instagram caption of that offseason, though. He was like, if you died without scars, you did nothing worth fighting for. Just flipped it on him. I loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm from this interesting little story. I live in Athens. I work in Athens. My younger siblings some still do go to Eastern, where Joe's mom was the principal down there. So, yeah. So, I kind of rooted for Joe. I root for Joe when he's not playing I don't root for the Bengals. We got to be clear. I want Joe to be successful while losing. if that makes sense.
I got a fun perspective because I'm in the battleground of Columbus, Ohio, and this year with the Bengals being as good as ours, defending AFC champions, and the Browns hopefully having a bounce back year. This is ground zero when it comes to the state of Ohio because when I was going up to a Super Bowl party to see Nick in February, I was leaving Columbus, and the north side of Columbus on a bridge overpass there was "Go Bengals," in the Super Bowl. And, Columbus usually, I would say traditionally, has been a Reds and a Browns town. But now with the Bengals infiltrating and having the success, especially with Joe Burrow and everything, this is a pivotal year. So the Browns better do good because, the Bengals definitely, and rightfully so, the Who Dey Nation, is definitely taking over the 614, but we can't let that happen. But, I've always said this. I would rather lose to the Bengals and have them take over the AFC than the Baltimore Ravens or the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. I know that you shouldn't say that to any one of your opponents, but I actually respect the Bengals and like what they're doing, and I don't actually hate them.
Yeah, I've never had a big Cleveland hate either. I got a lot of fans a lot of friends. I don't have a lot of fans. I shouldn't say that ever. A lot of friends who are big Browns fans. I've never really had a big hatred for Cleveland. It's fun when we're both good. The Thursday night matchup, Joe Burrow's first year when him and Baker went back and forth. They're all fun. I judge how I feel about fan bases off Twitter. I have like a decent Twitter following. I'm pretty active on there, but like Ravens fans are some of the worst fans on the planet, I've learned. And Browns fans really leave me alone. So I think everything's kosher there. And I will always hate Pittsburgh. I'd root for ISIS before I rooted for Pittsburgh.
Yes. I got to say one thing that really was tough for me was the 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl living in Athens, Ohio, because Bengals everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Everywhere. And it's great. It's being from this small little town to see Joe succeed like that. It's just been really awesome. Guys, let's dive in. Let's dive into the Bengals draft. That's what we're here to talk about. I know we'll probably touch a little bit on some of the free agency stuff because that's where they really rebuilt the offensive line. So let's start at the top, man, with Daxton Hill. I like Daxton Hill a lot. Him being there at 31, I thought there was a realistic possibility he wouldn't be there at 31. But I like Daxton Hill a ton out of Michigan. However, it makes me think they're not going to pay Jesse Bates, and then the stuff comes out with Jesse Bates holding out or potentially holding out because I know he said So I saw a report today that said he wouldn't hold out in the season, but he was not going to come in right now. I don't know. You might know better than I do. But so how do you feel about Daxton Hill as it relates to who he is, the player, and then how it relates to Jesse Bates?
So I may make your listener base like me a little bit less, but actually you can't really see it. But right there's a Michigan flag.
Yeah.
So I am a Michigan fan also. So I watched every snap of Dax Hill's college career. Been a big Dax Hill fan since Michigan was recruiting him. And I thought I tweeted this out, and Bengals Twitter did not like that I said it. I said Jesse Bates was drafted to replace Jesse Bates. It's just it's the reality of the situation. I know that Hill can play slot corner. He's willing to play boundary corner, which is somewhere the Bengals may need, but I think that he's going to just take the free safety position. Von Bell's going to be able to be retained for cheaper. Jesse Bates, clearly, there's been zero progress. He hasn't signed his franchise tender. We haven't heard any reports of any contract negotiations having any real traction. His agent, David Mulgeta, did like one of my tweets when I asked him to get the deal done, but that was months ago and we got nothing. So, and, Mulgeta just worked out a hell of a guaranteed contract with those guys in Berea. So if Bates is looking for heavy guarantees, if he's looking for top safety money, I don't think he's going to get it in Cincinnati. They've got guys to pay. Joe Burrow can get a contract extension this offseason. T. Higgins can get a contract extension this offseason. The following offseason will be Jamar Chase. I personally think that they're going to take the money that Jesse Bates wants. They're going to hold on to it, and they're going to give it to T. Higgins.
That would probably, with the way the NFL's going, I think that makes a lot of sense because the Bengals passing attack was, second to none, especially in the division. And I remember watching the Bengals play the Ravens and just Jamar Chase absolutely demolished them. And
that first one.
Yeah. And it's been a long time since it's been so distinct like that, I think. And the Bengals really made a statement, and I think that says a lot about how far. I mean, obviously they made it in the Super Bowl run.
Yeah, and I it's funny. When you look at the way that the Bengals drafted and created what I feel is the best wide receiver trio in football. And now the Bengals are drafting to defend the teams that are trying to recreate that, right? Because they went heavy. They went Dax Hill 1, Cam Taylor-Britt 2. They got Zach Carter in the 3rd from Florida, who actually I have a pretty solid opinion of him. But then they traded up for Tyson Anderson, the 3rd largest trade up in team history. They historically don't move up in the draft. So they went all in the draft on defense. Carter's a D lineman as well. So I think that, the defense, and people don't like when I say this either, but the defense is the reason they were in the Super Bowl. It wasn't necessarily the offense. The offense had 4 drives in the second half of the Super Bowl where they couldn't come up with any points. They kick a field goal twice. We win the game. Yeah. So the Bengals defense is what got them there. People think I'm hating on Joe Burrow, but I promise you I'm not. But he wasn't the reason that they won the wild card game against the Raiders. He wasn't the reason that they won the divisional game against the Titans. I know he got sacked 9 times in a playoff game and still won. He made some big key scrambles and he played good, but the reason the Bengals were there was their defense, and they doubled down on that. So I think that they just made too many investments in the secondary, too many versatile investments, guys that can move around and play different positions. And I just don't think that a big money contract for Bates is in the cards. And I hate that. I love Jesse Bates. I called him going into last season the best safety in the league. But if we really look at it, he didn't have a good regular season. He played his ass off. Can I say that on here? He played his ass off. Okay. All right. Hell yeah. I'm a foul-mouthed dude, so we'll be good. But, and he earned some money back in the playoffs, but at the end of the day, it wasn't his best season overall. So it's just a weird situation that they're in. I would love to see him come back, but I don't want to see him come back if it's going to handicap their ability to pay T. Higgins next year. I think T. Higgins is more important. I think T. Higgins is a number 1 wide receiver on 20 teams in the league. And if you're able to control his rights and keep him under contract and you have to lose a safety, I think that's fine. I think the Bengals – you look around the league, teams will do this a lot. They're going to pay one side of the ball and they're going to draft one side of the ball.
Yeah.
I think they're going to pay their offense and they're going to draft their defense.
Well, it certainly shines through when they took one offensive lineman and the rest of the draft was defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Volson, I like him too, just because of his post-game interview. He had a big lipper in. He's just talking about moving bodies around. Like he's an offensive lineman. That's cool. But I mean, they're very comfortable with the young depth they have. They're comfortable with signing Alex Kappa, Ted Karras, and Lyle Collins. And they must be happy with the depth behind them because they didn't do really anything. They didn't do anything in the draft to address it other than Volson, who, is coming from a small school. He doesn't have a ton of great competition. That, he's a developmental guy. I don't think he's going to push anybody to start.
You know what I like about the Bengals, and this is kind of not only with their draft, but the way that they've been executing their roster lately. Nobody ever thinks of the Cincinnati Bengals as on the forefront of leading trends in the National Football League. But to your point, they draft a kicker, Evan McPherson. Now the Cleveland Browns draft a kicker, okay, because special teams is important. Going 20 for 20, like you said, it wasn't the offense, it was the defense that got him to the Super Bowl. It was
McPherson.
Evan McPherson that got him to the Super Bowl. So now you see what the Bengals are doing with their trio of wide receivers. Now every team in the NFL is kind of doing that mold. And obviously, you got to have a franchise quarterback. So the Browns go out and they get Deshaun Watson. And so it's like a lot of things that the Bengals do now. It's never going to be on the money end of things with Cincinnati, obviously with things, with their owner and everything. But it's fun to watch them actually be trendsetters when it comes to how to build a roster and how to win in the National Football League, which is kind of nice. So I applaud what you guys are doing down there in the 513.
I think that, and I know this kind of sounds like the average Bengals fan cop out, but I really think Mike Brown is taking a step back from day-to-day operations. I think it's really Katie Blackburn and her husband. They've spent much more money in free agency the last few off seasons, and my goal here on Bengals Twitter is to just kind of keep everybody grounded, because I think everybody's like, oh, well, we're going to get Stephon Gilmore because we've been spending a bunch of money. and like that didn't happen, obviously. But the thing about it is they have spent a lot of money in contract value, but still guarantees is where the league is heading. Thanks a lot, David Mulgeta and Deshaun Watson. Right, the year before we have to renegotiate Burrow's deal.
Yeah.
For helping us out on that.
You're welcome.
But they're still relatively low in terms of guarantees. Lyle Collins, Alex Kappa, Ted Karras, $21 million guaranteed across all three of those guys. So that's where this is going to be. How much have the Bengals evolved? We got an indoor practice facility, so we got that out of the way. I'll never forget Colin Coward tweeted me about that, and I was like, man, I didn't even tag him. He was at home searching his name. Something I said about him, like, whatever, bro. But I mean, so when it comes time to give Joe Burrow his money, a lot of people are just assuming because Joe Burrow's a great teammate. We haven't seen anything to suggest that he's not, 100% about the team and winning. Everybody's like, oh, well, he'll just take a pay cut like Brady did, and he very well may, but we can't operate under that assumption. He might say, that guy up I-70 just got $230. I want $250 fully guaranteed. And with these contracts, I just learned this recently. When you guarantee a dollar amount in a contract, you have to move that money into escrow.
It's got to go in escrow.
It's not just a promise that I'm going to give you $35 million a year or whatever it breaks down to. You have to move that cash into escrow. So that's where I start to wonder does Mike Brown have that? Because Jimmy Haslam owned Pilot Flying J. I believe he might have sold it.
80% to Warren Buffett. 80%, but yes,
Yeah, and he's still got money stashed away from when he was scamming those truck drivers. So I mean, he's got plenty of cash that he's
got $5 billion.
So you know what I mean. So I'm starting to wonder if that's going to. I compare it to this. The NBA has the luxury tax. The Lakers can always pay the luxury tax. The Warriors can always pay the luxury tax. Well, the NFL's version of the luxury tax, I'm starting to think, is signing bonuses and guarantees.
Yeah.
And that's where you're going to see how willing the Bengals are to adapt to the new NFL if they have the cash fluidity to do it. There are questions about that. I tend to think anybody that owns an NFL team has a lot of fluid cash, but you don't really get to see that, I can't think of the guy's name. I'm drawing a blank on it. The owner of the Rams. He's independently rich.
Les
Snead, yeah.
Les Snead.
Yeah.
And Shad Khan, independently wealthy. These dudes have NFL teams as hobbies, the Bengals are a family-run business that Mike Brown inherited, and that's all they've got. So it makes me wonder how that's going to go because maybe Burrow's a nice guy and takes a team-friendly deal. That's cool, but I bet T. Higgins isn't. David Mulgeta is Jesse Bates' agent. He's T. Higgins' agent. Is the Jesse Bates thing going to sour any of those, negotiations? There's a whole lot of, dominoes that have to fall there. But just looking at the history of the franchise, they don't like to guarantee contracts. And I just think that they're going to have to now because, Christian Kirk just got $84 million. Like, dude, look at the market.
The Christian Kirk thing. Yeah, I was advocating for Christian Kirk. He signed that contract, and I was like, no, I will take
the best receiver on his team last year.
Yeah. I was like, I will give Amari Cooper $20 million.
Yeah, Amari can have it.
They stole Amari Cooper. If you look at how the market played out, was it a fifth rounder?
I feel like they did.
A fifth rounder, and they swapped sixes. Like it was
highway robbery.
It was like crazy. I want to catch up real quick, Nick, on the comments over here because we got a whole bunch of things coming in here. Apparently, I've now learned that Nick has solved world peace. That is the thing.
Okay,
that's happened. Mitch, he's from Athens as well. He lets everybody know he has a Joe Burrow hoodie to support him, but he doesn't have a Bengals logo. Listen. I'm going to tell a story about Mitch. So,
I like that.
Mitch works for me at transportation and parking at Ohio University, and one Tuesday before the Jaguars game, he was working in a parking lot at Peden Stadium selling parking for people to come into the OU game, and he calls me hyperventilating because he had just parked Joe Burrow. So Joe had come to the OU game. It was a Tuesday, and he's like, I love Mitch, but he's like, I just parked Joe Burrow. And like he was really all jazzed up about that. And then
was it the Porsche?
Yes, it was. He's
got a couple nasty Porsches.
I was like, well, what's he driving? I think it was Is there a blue one, a green one? Is that? I'll have to. Mitch will know. He'll tell me what he was driving.
I've seen him pull up in a couple.
Let's. I always think this is funny because I used to call TJ Hushmanzada Who's Your Mama as well because I could not spell that as well. So Mitch is down. Okay. All right. So okay. So the MC Lawrence's comment, they knew what they were doing when they signed that Watson contract guaranteed, especially with both Lamar being a lot sooner than Joe, but
I just want to say we've got a great guy in Brown's Twitter. His name's Jack Duffin, and he does a bunch of cap work. And when we talked about Joe Burrow, Jack basically said that there's a way that the Bengals can guarantee, like basically at the beginning of every year, a new segment of guaranteed for that year kicks in. So Bengals have an opportunity to if they can just guarantee year by year, they can still guarantee the entirety like other teams have, but they can do it on a yearly basis that perhaps the Browns would more easily afford.
Yeah, I think that there's always going to be ways around it, but when you look at, I say this all the time on Twitter, I think the salary cap's bullshit. I think it's there to give us it's so fans can live under the guise of parity, right? Like, oh yeah, well everybody's on a level playing field but it's not that way anymore. And this started with Kansas City. They had like literally $7 in cap space. They re-signed Tyreek Hill, they re-signed Travis Kelce, and then Patrick Mahomes got $500 million. So like, it's clearly it's a farce, right? And that's okay. That's the name of the game. But I just wonder, the Bengals are a small market team. Are they going to be able to adapt with that? Will they have the cash flow to do that? And that's just the way it's going to be. But there are ways around it. They've historically always paid their quarterbacks. They paid Andy Dalton way too much money. They paid Carson Palmer. I don't think that there's going to be any issue with them paying Joe Burrow. I personally do think that Joe Burrow will probably take a little bit of a discount to help things out. But I also don't operate under the assumption that he's going to, like I see some people do, because it's a business. At the end of the day, these guys are out to get their money, and if Deshaun Watson can get Jimmy Haslam to guarantee him $230 million, then props to him and his agent, and the rest of the league's going to have to adjust. But Baltimore, I would love for them to give Lamar all that money because I think Lamar is just not good.
People completely ignore how bad he was last year. Just pretend like he was not a turnover machine because he had some nice comeback victories. Like, it's not like he's terrible, but obviously he's regressing in ways. And
he's the new Vince Young. I say this all the time. He's the new Vince Young.
2019. Okay, that's not 2022. I don't understand that.
I misspoke earlier. Les Snead's the GM. Stan Kroenke is the owner.
Sorry.
Yeah, Kroenke. Yep.
Yeah, that's my bad.
Kroenke, that's it. Yep.
Yeah, I knew I messed it up. I knew Les Snead, but for whatever reason, I was panicking. Okay, so this is my thing about, we've talked about this, and then we got a couple of questions for you, Drew, that have popped up over here in the chat. We've talked about this, right? We've talked about this quarterback's arms race already. We've talked about how good the wide receiver room is in Cincinnati, and you're seeing other teams trying to duplicate it. You're seeing it all over. Look at all the quarterback movement, not all I meant wide receiver, but quarterback and wide receiver movement, these massive contracts. I don't know what the hell they're doing in Tennessee. We're not even going to get into that. I don't know what the hell they're doing. But the Bengals draft, like you said, they drafted in such a way where they see it, man. Like we got a guy on Brown's Twitter, Marcus Harvey, who was advocating before the Deshaun Watson trade for the Browns to take a corner at 13. And a lot of people were saying how crazy it was. I don't think it was going to happen, even though corner ended up being their first pick. I mean, maybe Marcus was onto something. It sounds like they really wanted Andrew Booth before he got sniped by the Vikings. But Cincinnati showed it as well, that they know that this isn't a pass-happy league, and they attacked defensive secondary in this draft. Cam Taylor-Britt is was one of my favorite defensive backs in this draft. Some places, like I'm looking at Pro Football Talk, they have him listed as a safety. I think he's more of a corner than he is a safety, but he can do all of it. I mean, he can do a lot of what Jesse Bates can do. I'm not saying they're the same player, but you get what I'm saying, because as we talked about the versatility there. So
yeah.
To you, like, is this team's secondary able to go toe-to-toe with the quarterbacks and the wide receivers in the AFC.
Yeah, because I saw him do it last year. I saw him beat the Chiefs twice with Tyreek, with Travis Kelce. And, that was the cream of the crop, that everybody was looking at. I think they absolutely can. I think Bates plays this year. I personally, if I didn't think a long-term deal was getting done, I'd let him negotiate it with somebody else and I'd trade him. But the Bengals are historically known for getting the absolute max value of a contract out of a guy while they have him, like they did with AJ Green. So I think he plays, and that gives Lou Anarumo, who I completely changed my tune on that guy last year. Just his second. I watched a post-game press conference once where Marvin Lewis said that halftime adjustments weren't a real thing. And it was just so refreshing to see. No, that's a real thing. And, Anarumo would go and, down 21-3 against the Chiefs, and he figured something out at halftime and just made Mahomes look pedestrian the whole second half. So I think what Dax Hill is going to give him this year is a toy. Von Bell's solid. Jesse Bates is solid and sometimes really, really damn good. I think he's going to be able to just sprinkle Hill in there for a year, get him some time on the field, maybe send him off the edge. If they run that dollar dime defense, they can put him as a second slot corner opposite Mike Hilton. So I think that I have no, and you guys, just kind of got to know me, but I had a very, very big reputation for being like the most negative person on Bengals Twitter. But I can't do that this year. I think I can walk into this season and we can beat anybody. We're half a second of an offensive lineman holding up Aaron Donald away from a wide open Jamar Chase running in for the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. So they can hang with anybody. Why should I be afraid of any team in the league right now?
I don't think I could have handled the Bengals Super Bowl win. I couldn't have done it. It was like going to break me to see that. But I think about that picture all the time, right? Where it's like if Burrow just has an extra second, that's a touchdown and they win.
See, I'm a little bit older.
If I see the back judge, I didn't mean to cut you off, but if I see the back judge that threw that hold on Logan Wilson in person, I'm fighting him. I'm going to jail. I'm going to whoop his ass.
The Bengals in Super Bowls, I'm a little bit older, but I remember when they lost to the 49ers back in 89 or 88 or whatever like that. And it was the Joe Montana, they're up, 20 to whatever like that. And then Joe Montana leads them on that final drive or whatever like that, and sees John Candy in the stands and that infamous, with John Taylor or whatever. And it's like the Bengals in the Super Bowl, they're always so close, and it's so heartbreaking. And, and I was rooting for the Bengals. I was 9 years old, living in Cleveland at the time. And to Nick's point, I was rooting for them, but I'm so glad they lost because I don't, knowing what the Browns' history's been, I don't know if I could do it. I
couldn't.
I don't think so either.
Because that's a whole other group that's going to be like, no rings, no ring. I couldn't do it.
I would have been in that group.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm kind of an asshole. I'm kind of an asshole. I don't give the Browns a lot of shit, on the internet because they don't poke me. I don't poke them. It's cool, but somebody probably would have, and I would have definitely used that because I have a van. It's on my Twitter. I have a van that's it was white and then it got painted orange. It's got stripes on it. It's got the Bengals logos on it. All that good stuff. And on the back, there are two bump. I got it from quick backstory. It was my grandma's van. My dad used to borrow it to go to games. My grandma got cancer when she was old. She knew her time was up. She said, "Here, take it, make it a Bengals van." My dad's a little bit older. He didn't want to deal with it. He gave it to me. But my least favorite thing on this van are the two AFC champion banners that they put on the back. And I'm like, man, I know we lost those Super Bowls. Don't do that. Yeah. I was so ready to put a big ass Lombardi on the back windshield of that thing, man. And it's just sitting in the garage with the same damn sticker. I'm not putting a 2021 AFC championship banner on there.
That'd be like rocking the 2016 AL champion Cleveland Indians shirts.
Knowing how it went down. I'm not reliving that. So I will
think about that game on my deathbed.
I got a question though.
I think about it every fucking day.
So you say that though, but they did the city of Cincinnati proud, and it was a fun run and everything like that. And I always say it is always about the memories, but it does hurt. Like I remember the Indians losing the 97 World Series, the 2016 World Series, and yes, you don't want to go around and say, "Oh, you're second place," but as a Cleveland fan, I don't know. I would love to be defending AFC champions, just to get there, but. to your point, after being the three of them, it stings not winning. But I guess my thing is,
At least you got there.
I want my heart to hurt because at least I was there.
At least you
Yeah,
were
but you know, like I look at it and like this season came out of nowhere. Nobody expected the Bengals to do shit. And I was born in 91. So after their last playoff win. So like I got to go to the wild card game. Definitely the most fun season of my life. I think about certain moments from it every day. Like I just live and breathe this stuff, and that's great. But like when I think about how it ended, man, I feel like the ugly kid that got the prom queen at the after party and then he, fell asleep. You know what I mean? Like it was almost there.
It's so close. He got into the room.
I gotta say, the biggest thing to me is like Joe Burrow became one of the coolest people in the NFL. And it like for the first time ever. So I'm in Cleveland, and I started seeing Bengals gear like consistently, and I was like, "What is happening?" Because like you see some Steelers stuff every once in a while. You see Baltimore, but it's like we can't do 4 teams here. That's not a thing, And so I was just like, please, because it's the Bengals for the Super Bowl. I mean, it's a battle of Ohio, and the Bengals are winning it, man.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, as much as I don't hate Cleveland, I only want them to do so well,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like you can beat Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Which of the Bengals receivers do you believe will be signed post rookie deals? I think you've kind of addressed it a little bit already.
I think they keep them both. I really do, and I think that if it comes down to it, Tyler Boyd will be the odd man out. He's older. He's a slot receiver. I think he's the best slot in the league, but he's got a $10 million cap hit right now, which is a little bit up there based on the production he had last year because there's so much, there's Higgins, there's Chase. And just the reality of the situation, he's a little bit older. It's going to be, the end of his second contract. I think he'll be the odd man out. I really do think they find a way to keep both Chase and Higgins.
There you go. I do. I think Tyler Boyd's one of the most underrated players in the NFL. I said that going into last year, and I'll stick by that. Before we let you go here, give me a grade for the let's do the Cincinnati Bengals draft, and let's do the Bengals offseason as a whole.
So draft wise, I give them a B. And I like the Dax Hill pick. I came to like the Cam Taylor-Britt pick. The more I looked into him, I saw some early things that made me a little bit iffy. But now that he's a Bengal, I'm obviously going to root for him. But I looked into him more. I like Zach Carter a lot. I just think that Florida just did not use him correctly. He just moved around too much. He never really got consistent play time in any role along the defensive line. But the thing is, as much as he moved, he produced pretty much wherever they put him. So I think that he's going to be solid as well. The reason I'm only looking at a B is because I was really, really hoping for a tight end. I was really hoping for like a Trey McBride, a Greg Dulcich, one of those guys that can really kind of attack the seam. And because I've been saying it, and my co-host, you guys may see him on Twitter, Chad Penrod. He's a big Browns fan.
Yeah.
He's been he's my best friend. We talk about this stuff all day, but he's been saying for years since Burrow came into the league, like the Bengals need like a really athletic, good tight end. And I think that could have taken this offense over the top, and they just didn't go for it. I think they had a chance at Dulcich, maybe not as much, with made a noise, but so that kind of takes me from like the A- to a B level, just because I really think they could have done something for the offense there. Not that they needed too much on the line, but that tight end, that's what really kind of was a miss to me, because Hayden Hurst is all right, but Hayden Hurst is also playing on a 1-year prove-it deal, and if he has a good season, which I think he has the potential to do, he's going to get paid, but it's going to be somewhere else. So I think they could have had a rookie that they could control for a few years that could contribute. Off-season as a whole, I have to give them an A. I have to give them an A just because they did the number one most important thing, and that was solidify the line. I think Jonah Williams came into his own a little bit last year, finally playing healthy. Left guard is a question mark with Jackson Carman because he couldn't stay on the field, and now he's got some of the off-the-field stuff that kind of flared up, on him. Ted Karras is going to be a solid center. He's not going to be, prime Alex Mack I always really liked Alex Mack. He's not going to be that guy like that.
We don't want to talk about him.
All right, my bad. Kappa, I like Kappa. And I love Lyle Collins, man. I love the way that they did it. They didn't make it easy. You know, I thought they could send a 5th rounder for him and just get it done, but they waited it out. They didn't give up anything for him. They signed him. So they could have done just that, skip the draft, and I'd still be happy just because Burrow with a clean pocket and time, man. You know, people are, there's a lot of T. Higgins talk on Twitter. Is he good? Is he not? Wait until he has some time for these deeper routes to actually develop, and Burrow doesn't have to throw the ball away in a second and a half. I think that, you know, that they could have just done that, and I would have gone to bed happy, you know, the night before week 1. So, you know, A, for the offseason, B, for the draft. They could have really had a slam dunk if they would have just got some sort of athletic tight end.
Well, we really appreciate it, man. Before we let you get off here real quick, can you let everybody know where they can find you if they want to check out all your stuff?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Drew Garrison, just my first and last name, DrewGarrison. Our podcast is on the Believe Podcast Network, Battle of Ohio with Chad and I. It's at Battle of Ohio Pod, all spelled out, POD at the end. So we're going to kind of get that back rolling here now as the season promotes. We're very, very not professional. Lots of F-bombs, and sometimes I throw shit, but you know, we have a lot of fun with it. So we have a blast with that. And you know, I appreciate everybody in the comments. I saw a couple Kentucky Bengals comments in there. I'm pretty used to that.
I left them off to the side.
Just
yeah,
remember,
I see a little sidebar there.
Just remember, your quarterback's an Ohio State Buckeye.
You know, stop trying to claim him. You didn't appreciate him.
We had too many good players. I'm a graduate of Ohio State, went to Ohio State, so I know you're a Michigan fan, and I love the rivalry, and I hopefully the Buckeyes, and then Michigan will do it again this year and be a good game, but also the Bengals and the Browns, you know, so maybe when I come on your podcast, you can throw some stuff around. We can talk whatever. Let's do this.
I got a tidbit for you on the Ohio State Michigan thing, real quick though. Yeah. My dad actually played for Ohio State for Woody Hayes.
Wow.
If you look up when Woody Hayes punches the guy from Clemson in the throat.
Yep.
Number 51, bottom left corner is my dad. He's right there.
The guy ran into him. Woody wasn't punching it. He just outstretched his arm. The guy ran into him.
Okay. All right. We're not even going to get into this. And we're going to, Drew, we really appreciate your time, man. I hope we can talk again soon.
Thanks so much, Drew.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it, man. You guys have a good night.
You too. All right, man. Yeah, I really enjoy getting to talk to people from other fan bases and whatnot, and be able to talk about the draft.
He's fun. He's fun. I like him.
Yeah, well, and it's like it was one of those drafts where you get mad. You want your rivals to draft poorly, and they didn't. So it's like, you know, what are we gonna do? We're gonna wait here. We will have our second guest. He'll be on in just a few minutes.
You know what?
Transition over.
I just want to say he brought up Alex Mack, and I thought about how the Browns beat the Bengals in prime time, and we're 7-3. We're first place in the division, and Alex Mack broke his leg,
and it was over.
Everything fell apart. They played Jacksonville the next week and got obliterated. And just every hope and dream just that was.
Yeah, as soon as he mentioned Alex Mack, I'm like, oh, did he have to say that name?
I felt it in my soul.
Oh.
That was when I really believed. I was like these, because Kyle Shanahan ran the offense, and I still miss Kyle Shanahan. I do. I can't say it.
Stop it, Nick. It was
amazing. I know, but I'm happy with Kevin Stefanski. But I'm just saying, like that was a season of dreams, and Alex Mack's leg gave out on the season of dreams.
All right, guys, we've got our second guest on here from the OBR, the best film man in the business, Mr. Jake Burns. Jake, how you doing, man?
What's up, guys? How are you?
Doing great. We just had to listen to how good the Bengals draft is.
Yeah, I was in my feelings, Jake. You got to forgive me.
How good the Bengals what now?
Their draft. We had a Bengals guest on talking about their draft.
Greatest draft ever, I bet.
you know how it is, man. Hey, we wanted to get in off the top with Isaiah Thomas. I know we had discussed this a little bit. I want to ask you this one off the top because I got a couple of questions about him, but I watched a lot of him today. And do you see Tack McKinley in his game?
Yeah, I think he's a nice strong side defensive end who can kind of anchor, play, run when he needs to, but plays aggressively. I think a lot of people are concerned with the lack of range of motion, flexibility, but in the right 4-3 scheme, I don't think that's a problem. And age obviously plays into why he falls where he does, and then it's just about finding a team at the right time with the right need. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I think he can do some of those things. I'm not sure he's quite as bursty or twitchy as Tack is, but to me, he's a player who can certainly fill a role as a strong side edge, not a weak side guy, but he can play run to pass in that regard. And, in a team that needs run fits to be built that way. And if you're curious what I mean by that, we actually just wrote on it. John Stephenson, who does a great job. He coaches here in Central Ohio. One of the best defensive guys I've ever talked to. He just wrote on Clowney's role and why he's so important for it. So if you want to learn a little more about that strong side edge stuff, we have that up so you can take a peek at that too. So yeah, it's a certain type of build, a body type, and I think he's got that body type, the ability to anchor a little bit when you need to anchor and set as the force defender. So yeah, I like him and in tremendous value. And I talked to an affiliate guy from 247 that does Oklahoma recruiting and beat, and they were stunned he was there in the 7th round. I mean, they really liked him. They thought he was one of the most consistent guys on that front and just kind of was a forgotten factor because of a lot of things that went on with Oklahoma's program last year, because of Perion's burst late in the scene. There's a lot of people that really like him, man.
I thought it was kind of interesting when I watched him that I thought that I see a lot of effort plays, like as a rusher. I think not effort, not motor plays. I just feel like he goes through the whole snap really, really well. And that's kind of where I saw the Tack McKinley comparisons just with him. Yeah, I remember when you were that interview actually, because I was going to ask you, man. I just don't get when he goes in the 7th round. I didn't know he was still on the board.
Yeah, I didn't. You kind of lose track at that point. It's really hard to keep track of best player available because so many different outlets meander away from whatever draft scout you want to go with for these things. So yeah, he's a guy that when I talked to someone else from Oklahoma sort of late in the year, he also identified Isaiah as a player that would be a really good value player. He kind of said a 4th, 5th round guy. So much like Perion being there in round 4, you kind of felt like Isaiah being there in round 7, and especially the need for somebody to identify themselves as that. I mean, they're searching here, right? I think we can all identify that they're trying to figure out who the 3rd and 4th edge will be. You got some good candidates here. I think you have 3 really good candidates that they've either drafted or made a move to trade for, and Winovich, Wright, and Isaiah here. But then, they also signed some veterans as well. And, what's his name? Rochelle and
Stephen
Weatherly, yeah. So there's a lot of movement at that position, right? So they're trying to do the best they can to have some sort of contingency in place in case Clowney doesn't come back. I think all of us have been a little surprised that we've seen guys like Melvin Ingram and Jerry Hughes kind of go by and they haven't seemed to be connected to them as far as we know on the surface. It feels like no matter how many insiders are in the industry, you never really know if the team you cover is all that into a player. But we haven't heard any serious connection. So I think as we all sit here and until we have any evidence to the contrary, at least a couple people that are relatively connected in the industry have told us that there's all signs pointing toward Clowney in Cleveland. It's just a matter of whether Clowney, hey man, I'll go back and play in the cold weather again. I think that's a way bigger factor for him than people understand. He's a Southern guy his whole life. He plays in Texas, right out of college. And he even expressed it too, his nervousness about playing in Cleveland and the temperatures and all of that stuff. So if he comes back, I think it'll be because Cleveland outbid everybody. That's kind of where I'm at with it. So hopefully that does come to fruition.
Jake, I just want to ask, because the way you speak about Thomas, it sounds like you'd be fairly confident that he'll make the team then.
I think so. Well, I mean, let's put it this way, guys. I think this too. I think it's been a pretty smart point by most people who are watching closely that they haven't cut a draft pick of Andrew Berry's yet. They have not cut a single guy. So I would be pretty surprised if they did it out of this class. So I think we operate on much like we all have studied the guardrails and studied the athleticism factors and the age factors until we get evidence of the contrary, which we do sometimes, right? Like last year when they went on and moved up for a linebacker, Andrew Berry's like, I'll do this. And then they said kind of the same thing about this year when, people have kind of caught on to the age stuff. And he said, well, that's not the only factor. So, but until we have some tangible proof, right, that they're going to do these things, we operate under the idea that, yeah, he'll be here. And guys like Rochelle and Weatherly and Winovich are going to have to fight an uphill battle to make the roster, going to have to prove that they're that much more valuable. So, yeah, I would sit here and say, I don't want to say a lock. I mean, he could get here and be totally terrible, but I think we operate under him being here, right?
Yeah.
So,
what's the latest on Ndamukong Suh? With any news on him? Or
Brad Stainbrook, our guy. Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ed. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. That was it. Go ahead.
Yeah, the first I'd heard about this connection to Ndamukong Suh was, I think, last week. Bill Barnwell wrote a piece about projecting where some of these fringe free agents go as this market has dwindled. And I was like, that's interesting, because I think the Browns have a lot more 3-tech operating guys in Elliott and obviously drafting Perry on that we think are going to be those types of players. And I would love a player who's a true congester, and Eddie Goldman, a 1-tech shade, somebody like Linval Joseph. I don't even know if Linval's still out there. It's been a minute, but he's a guy who caught my eye originally. But guys like that, because I don't think they've had that guy. And I know the Browns kind of orchestrate their interior D-line as like, hey, get after the passer and play the run on the way to the quarterback. But I think that they would benefit from having somebody who they can play early days. Like, I thought Malik Jackson and Malik McDowell, who's still, we've not heard a single thing about the Malik McDowell thing. Still very weird. But and maybe they just don't have to. Maybe they're just like, we're not bringing him back, and we don't have to address it because we're not bringing him back. But they could benefit, because I think that over the past few years, even back to Sheldon Richardson, they just have kind of worn down by the end of the year. Like, go look at their performances. And I'm not talking about, grades are easy to look at, but go watch how they played early in the year and look how they played late in the year. And you can just kind of see that these guys by the end of the year are pretty worn down. So somebody like that. Now, they have a couple guys in free agency. I think it's Glenn Cody, that's a kid out of LSU who's interesting. I could have messed up his name. And then there's another kid, Roderick something, out of Illinois. Haven't gotten to their tape, but their body types are bigger bodies. So to the heart of your question now, 5 minutes later into my answer, and Ndamukong Suh is a guy that I heard about Barnwell being like projecting him to Cleveland. Then I think Brad Stainbrook, who's pretty connected in the agent circles, has sort of linked, and he wrote about it for us. I think Las Vegas and somebody else, Tampa, I think, are still poking around there, but Cleveland has been interested. So, yeah, the guy doesn't miss games. He plays all the time. I think I saw that in 12 years he hasn't missed a game, which, if that's true,
wow,
that's bananas for an interior. Glenn Logan, sorry about that. I keep calling him Glenn Cody. Yeah. I don't know why I keep calling him Glenn Cody. It's a 2 first name thing that gets me. Yes. Create another first name, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it would be good. It'd be fine. It'd be, I don't think Ndamukong Suh is anywhere near the player he was 5-6 years ago, but he's a guy I think played like 60% of snaps for Tampa last year. Still an effective player in terms of, he's just a sheer force of nature, physically, strength wise, and so he can be a disruptor still. So I'd have no issue with that. And the Browns sit, I think, after the 2 waiver wire pickups today, they sit at 88 total players. So if they're sitting at 88, you kind of like start to scratch your head a little bit and say, okay, maybe a veteran D tackle there that would make some sense, and maybe the edge spot that we're holding for Clowney would make some sense. But they can move anybody at any time to do whatever they want to do. But I think as we look at those 2 roster spots, those are kind of where we all pinpoint they need the most help. So I would be fine with that. I'm sure it would be a 1-year deal, not a whole lot of money that would eat into some of that rollover money. People kind of forget the rollover cap is important when you do those void years, because eventually your credit card bill, while not interest tacked on like true credit cards, they still have to be paid. So the rollover cap allows you to cover that at later dates. So the Browns, while they sit here and you look at a lot of lists that say, they have XYZ amount of dollars in their top 5 in cap, they don't view it that way. They kind of view it as fitting everybody into a shell and then being able to cover some things later on that they need to via rollover. But that nice part is they don't actually have to pay for that out of the true salary cap. So as it rises, they're using the rollover to pay the void years that they've tacked on for other guys to fit it at lower thresholds. So, you know what I mean? Then the cap goes up. Okay, now we're going to be able to use this 220 instead of 208, but we also have this 25 rollover cap that we can use to eat these void years this year. So I think they could do something really similar to that and give him like almost a year in a void, kind of the similar structure to Troy Hill. And Clowney, really, that's a big part of why they want Clowney back, is they're already going to pay for him this year to an extent. There's a portion of that's already being paid. So, might as well get him to play for you if you're going to pay him a little bit of money too. So, hopefully that works out. But yeah, I think Sue would be fine. He'd be fine. It'd be a little log jammy at the 3 tech, but if they think they can slide one of those guys over and do some different sort of odd fronts every now and again, or do some of the what we call boss front stuff where they slide 3 guys to one side and let do some really creative blitzing they do in pass downs. They slide a bunch of guys away, walk a couple second level players up, linebackers, or a dime backer like Ronnie Harrison, and get really creative and blitz stuff. So you can do some fun things like that with him. But to me, I mean, we wrote about it today again, like Eddie Goldman, one of those guys to me, Akeem Hicks would be really, really good for what they need too, because I think it kind of fits more of a need. But I'm also not Joe Woods, and they seem to have a pattern of type of guy. That's the nice thing too, is we haven't gotten, I was talking to our guys about that. We have not gotten, it's been so long. I know you were talking about Kyle Shanahan before you let me in the show here. Like, it's so rare that we get the Browns having the same play callers on both sides of the football for a third year. You start really like, okay, here's what I know Joe Woods likes. Here's what I know Kevin Stefanski. And I know we're kind of recreating. I'm going to try to put together a series in July of what the offense recreated with Watson looks like. But we at least start to figure out, here's the personnel groupings they prefer. Here's the type of concepts that they prefer. We can deduce like certain coverage types. We know that Joe Woods is definitely a zone over man guy. When he does go zone, it's actually kind of a form of man because they run this check to 3-by-1. And here's why Denzel Ward's really important, because they're going to isolate him in the boundary corner and give him one-on-one coverage all the time while everybody else is kind of playing a box, what's called poach check. It's fun. It's fun to get to know what these guys like, and then you see them deviate from it, and you're like, okay, that's fun. They're kind of checking off the things that they normally do. They're playing chess. Yeah. They know teams are scouting them. They know that they have to beat their own tendencies, and that's when it's fun. Every year when it's like, let's break down a new OC. Let's break down, all the way back to Freddie Kitchens and Todd Monken. Let's break this down. Now we got to break down. It's not fun. It just gets old after a while,
Turns out when you were breaking down Todd Monken, you didn't really need to.
This is true.
I looked at Ndamukong Suh, 2 games. He missed 2 games his second year. That's it. He played every other game in 12 years. So Glenn Logan, it's interesting.
Did he get suspended though? Didn't he get suspended a few times? Did he did the stomp?
I remember on Thanksgiving.
I think he did.
Didn't he stomp on Aaron Rodgers?
But
he's got nasty. Yeah. I like nasty.
Wouldn't that have been? I think that would have been his second year though, because if you look at his Pro Football Reference, every other year it says 16 games and 16 starts, other than this year. So.
Yeah, it might have been early.
Suspended for that.
Might have been the only time he missed. So you brought up Glenn Logan from LSU. I really like. It's really interesting about Glenn Logan because you talk about the types that they have on the defensive line. Glenn Logan, like now he's 339, but I went back and watched some of his tape at LSU. He started out as an edge rusher at under 300 pounds. Like he was like a 280, 290 edge rusher, like a big edge rusher. So like there's another. You just talked about kicking people outside, kicking people inside, something that Isaiah Thomas and Alex Wright and Clowney and Miles, all these guys can do it. You can shuffle them all around. I'm the biggest. Well, Corey Kinnan might give me a run for my money, but I think I'm the biggest Alex Wright stan on Brown's Twitter. His jersey is already on its way to my house. That is a thing. Awesome. That is going on, and I get to talk to him on Friday, so I'm like having a good week. So, but yeah, no, I really like. I think Glenn Logan he seems to be the one that Tyler brought up too. They gave him quite a bit of guaranteed money.
I think they kind of poached him away at the last minute from somebody else too, if I recall, that he had been tweeted to having agreed with someone, and then the Browns swooped in with some more guaranteed money. So yeah, they must like him. I mean, they've been hunting that market. Who did they have? Marvin Wilson last year, right? Like, they're hunting that market for trying to find a sleeper undrafted free agent at the D tackle spot. So maybe they're hoping one of these guys can figure it out. But they're playing sort of that cheap game with the position. And it's clear to us that like we all kind of tried to pigeonhole linebacker as that position, but really it seems for now they could go out and invest a little more next year. And again, granted, it was a pretty weak free agency class at the position and a pretty well-documented poor upper portion of the draft at that position. So if it's stronger, maybe they would have moved for somebody. But, I think some guys that we thought they could be interested in, Logan Hall, for example, who I was, a pretty firm believer in this defense is fit. He goes right in front of them. So that was probably one of the many factors that led to them deciding to move down from 44. Some of those guys they thought could be there were not there to help at that position. So we'll see. We'll see if it ends up biting them. I think we can all agree. I think what's his name? Mike Clay at ESPN just put out his position by position rankings, kind of looking at a way to measure team value. And he pinpointed the Browns as having the worst defensive tackle group in the NFL. And I've been pretty vocal about this with our OBR guys that like this position is a problem. It's a massive problem. Now, maybe you can get by with it. That's fine. I'm not a believer in Tommy Togiai, and I'm not a believer in Jordan Elliott in terms of snap to snap, any sort of worth it. They'll have a flash play here and there. Jordan Elliott had a couple more decent efforts this past year than he had the year before, but I would just prefer to have some sort of consistency inside. But again, you can't fix everything all the time. You always have to have some moving parts. So it'd be nice to hit on a 4th round D tackle this year and maybe find a guy in UDFA who can be a serviceable first contract in the NFL type of player. So that's what we'll keep our fingers crossed about, right?
It's weird to me because I feel like there's more talent left in this part of free agency than there typically is. And you can tell me if I'm incorrect, but it definitely seems like there's guys out there that could very much benefit the Browns still.
Yeah, they could. I don't really know. I'm not going to say you're right or wrong on that because I feel like every year is just such a blank slate. I forget year to year. So you could be right. I'd have to flash back and see if we could find like an article about this time last year about who they could sign. I mean, I know we've all pretty much been covering that Clowney signed back like April 14th of last year, and that felt late last year. So now we're into May 17th, and it's like, okay, so was he just going to skip all of the offseason? Which, whatever, cool, I guess if he shows up. But you're probably right. I do think there are some veterans that can help. Does that speak to a little bit of like the influx? It was a humongous draft class this year because of the extra COVID year. Is there a little hesitancy to sign those bottom tier free agents because we think we can draft players that can do that? I think the Browns are kind of that example with the 3rd tight end situation where we don't think they're going to sign anybody. And it's like, okay, well then who's it going to be? Because you play 3 tight ends a lot and you got a bunch of names that are not very well registered. Some guys who have transitioned from another sport as a part of your discovery session here. So I think that could be it, Nick. I don't know, man. It's a good point by you. I'm not totally sure, but there are definitely, to the larger point you made, a lot of names that could still help them at several positions that they need. And I've tried to kind of cover that as best I think I can. Like, what are positions that are needs versus the ones that we just want some better talent, right? Because that's a big discussion point. There are needs they have, and I think that we've identified some of them talking already here. And then there's like some ones, hey, I'd really like a better solo free safety if they could find a guy, or, we would like maybe a perhaps more defined nickel. We would like that. I have to believe there's some greater plan in place just to ship Troy Hill off right after you draft Martin Emerson, but we'll see how that comes to be. And Sean Jolly, the kid out of App State, is an interesting UDFA for that role. We'll see what happens there. You don't really want to trust that, but they could have a plan. But and then it's like wide receiver. I think they're a little higher on some of the guys they have than we probably are. So they might just be ready to say, hey, let's see if the quarterback can elevate them the way we see other franchises have quality quarterback play, elevate some wide receivers who are kind of viewed in that middle to lower tier. So that's kind of more of a want than a need necessarily, but you could talk me into 5 or 6 guys that I think can really help them. I don't think that's the secret. So we'll see what shakes out. There's a lot of time. I've kind of tried to point this out, that there's still money to free up, that it doesn't actually hit the books. The Hooper money doesn't hit the books until after June 1st. So there could be somebody plan in place, something there that comes to fruition after June 1st when that money opens up too. So we'll kind of just see what happens. There are always summer signings, I believe, even though KJ Wright didn't really play for the Browns. I'm pretty sure he was a midsummer signing back then. So there's stuff like that shakes out still, even though we expect maybe it might not. It sometimes does.
Yeah, I like. I'm very big on the Jack Duffin loves adding Darren Fells. I really do think that would just be offensively. If you're looking for a cherry on top, it's the cherry. But Have you done anything? I did a little bit on him, and I see Tyler bringing him up in the comments. Have you looked any at Isaiah Weston yet out of the UDFA?
Yeah, he's older. He's much older. I think he's borderline 25 at the start of the season.
So yeah.
So he is. I mean, that's what we have to kind of understand collectively. And I'm not just talking about Tyler or anything like that. That people are like, why'd this guy go undrafted? Well, he's 25, and like, you know, that's it. So he is hyper athletic. There's no doubt about it. But you also have to understand that as a 21-year-old, your athleticism is not defined yet. You can still get more athletic as your body reaches its peak age, I don't know, 23, 24, even 25, that most of these guys that come in that 24, 25 range, you're kind of saying this is a maxed out athlete. Now, Weston as a maxed out athlete, pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good here, right? Like that's great. It's an outcome that is great, but he's kind of lauded for being a bigger body guy, but he doesn't play big. He doesn't play big. He's not a go up and get it receiver. He is kind of just an athletic, but yet kind of generic receiver where he doesn't have a bunch of nuance to his route development. He doesn't have the ability to catch the football outside of his frame consistently. He could be a special teams guy that they like. If he shows that ability to do that, they will keep a higher volume of receivers. If you have somebody who can go do those sorts of things. And it's blanking. I tried to, as I'm talking, think of my next point. I cannot think of the Green Bay receiver who was he came to Cleveland for a minute. He was a special teams ace for Green Bay. Caught a couple Hail Marys in Arizona for Aaron Rodgers. White guy. Can't think of his name. Very athletic.
Switzer?
No. Very. Hold on. Let me use this computer in front of my face and see if I can find it as we're talking.
Yeah.
So we'd say Packers, Hail Mary, Cardinals. See, this is what we do. These are why we're professionals.
There it is.
That's what we do.
Sometimes it's, you know what you got to do.
He came to Cleveland and he was eventually cut. Jeff Janis was his name.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jeff Janis was a special teams guy who was very athletic, never got a bunch of opportunities, did find an opportunity, and like, oh my God, this guy caught a couple consecutive deep bomb Hail Marys and I think it was a playoff game. So yeah, and then I think ultimately Arizona went into overtime, and I think Larry Fitzgerald scored or something like that. But anyway, that's the type. Like you could see that type coming to fruition for him, but he's not really going to be much more than just a very athletic testing guy who doesn't develop into much of a, you know, we're kind of banking on the flip side here with David Bell, right? Guy that doesn't test well, but man, does this guy know what it takes to actually get open, catch the football, make plays above his athleticism, or use those just sheer hand-eye coordination type things. So I think that's the counter to it. And again, the biggest reason he wasn't drafted, somebody would take a Christian Watson like risk on him if he was 21, 22. He's 25, so that's tougher. So, but again, I like that. I like that gamble. That's why you go out and sign a guy in UDFA that can do that stuff, because you just never know. Maybe he comes in and finds a level of catch on at that level and can keep developing and gets better and better, and all of a sudden he can be a player for you. So I definitely don't mind the approach of going after older but athletic, really athletic guys at that point.
There's hope for the AARP wide receivers.
Yep. If you're really athletic, you can be really crusty and old. Like, right? You can find
25. He is so old. He is
so old. So old. That's football old, man. It's like my dog. He's the same age. Right? It is weird. It is weird to talk about that. You'll be like, man, this guy has been in the league for 13 years and he's so old. It's like he's 33, and I'm like, I am also 33, and I don't feel that old, right? Yeah. So, yeah,
I can remember like, well, it's funny because I work at OU now, so like I work at and I work and I have a lot of student employees and stuff, and like the other day I was like, oh yeah, the kids that work for, and I was like, oh
yeah,
oh geez, here we go. Like,
you know, it comes out of nowhere.
Once I saw, you know what, it hit me really hard when Jason Kidd and Steve Nash became head coaches. And I'm like, I watched them in their prime, you know, and now here they are as coaches. I'm like, what happened? And
you got Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State now. And that just, that was the one where I was like, okay.
Well, then you got the guys who bend time like LeBron and Tom Brady, and it just doesn't make sense. And you can still feel young. But when LeBron and Tom are actually done, it's going to be like, man, you know,
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. I'll tell you, listen, I'll let you in on a little inside. We went to a Justin Bieber concert last night, sup. And my wife, big fan. And listen, I'm borderline believer. It's okay.
Yeah,
I'm a believer.
Yeah, man. But my man's, listen, he was rocking leather pants. It might have been some K-Swiss sneakers. He was rocking these 1990s, like every bad guy in Die Hard glasses with a hat. And I said to my wife, I'm like, maybe we're past this. Like, we don't get it anymore. Like, we left a little early. Like, we left a little early to beat the traffic. I said, this is it. Like, we're here now. We can't go back. Like, I don't know if I go to concert. There's others like Post Malone and some others who are younger than me, clearly. But maybe I just don't fit in that crowd anymore. Maybe it's not my thing. It's not something I can do. So, to the point of feeling older than maybe you're like, I'm only 33, still pretty damn young, but you just feel a little old. And I think that's kind of creeping up on me here. So, this is a personal story for you guys.
That's
you put in Justin Bieber, you're as young as you want to be.
Yeah.
As young as you want to be.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I feel like he's a weird gap bridger in terms of like the Baby song came out in what, like 2012? He was young. He was really young. And then he's still putting out some good songs, but it's a wide range of women like at this concert. It's like, man, I can't really tell what his age demographic is here for this thing. So
he gets them all. He gets them all.
Good for him.
we were like, we are out of here. We can't.
2010.
Yeah, I remember that when LeBron James took his talents down to South Beach. I'll never forget this. A couple days later, he went to New York City, and my heart was broken. He was walking out of one of those Gucci stores or something in Times Square, and he was singing, "Baby, baby, baby," and I was just so jealous. Like, why does Miami get LeBron and Cleveland doesn't? And I was just so jealous because he's singing that song.
You'll never forget that. Things that get burned into your brain, man.
It's the
etch.
I just remember I was like, he's wearing red and white. There's no way he's not going to pick Cleveland. He's wearing red and white. It's fine, right? It's totally fine. And he's like, I'm going to take my talents.
So before I got the most important question you'll ever be asked right now. This is the last question. I'll let you off the hook after this, but I got to know, is cereal soup?
Yeah, this has been coming up a lot lately. I've never thought cereal was soup. I don't even know where this discussion came from. Soup is hot. Like, I've never had cold soup. Like, I don't. Yeah. I really don't. I don't know where. I've never even heard the two. I don't know, man. I mean, I guess people are just having fun. I don't know. I've just never heard the question even come up. I don't know. Cereal's cereal. What the hell? I don't know. I don't have Campbell's cereal. Like, what are you doing here? I don't go to Panera for cereal. Like, what are we doing? I feel like we're just making up stuff to talk about, I guess. I
asked Pete Smith one time. Well, I asked Jeff Lloyd to ask him on Locked On Browns. And it was, oh my God, he was breaking down film, like telling you why cereal was soup.
What cold soup does everyone eat? Am I missing this?
There's a ton of cold soups.
In France, it's cold potato soup. It's like
we don't live in France, though.
Right? we don't. Thank goodness.
Let's not make it more difficult than it needs to be here.
I'm trying to help Jacob out here. I'm just trying to help Jacob.
One guest at a time. Jacob's getting there.
Yeah.
It's hard, bud.
I ask everybody that.
Yeah. Well, I just cinnamon toast cereal, crunch cereal, not soup. Well, I think if they could have branded for soup, they'd have probably gone for it because they could have double dipped and made more money, right?
Yeah, you just do both. Well, Jake,
thank you for coming on. This is awesome. This is a lot of fun, and you know what we need, especially in this time of the year, we need that. So, Jake, if you want to tell everybody where they can find you, feel free.
Yeah, the OBR. That's it. There, you can find me on Twitter at Jake_Burns18. Everything's at the OBR. There's an OBR podcast and all that fun stuff. So if you want to find me, you can find me. If you don't want to find me, also pretty cool with that too. That's fine.
Well, there it is.
It is.
What more do you need to know? Yeah. On that note, this has been episode 56 of the Barking Brown Show. I'm Nick. He's Jacob. That's Ed. And that's Jake. Go Browns.
Go Browns!